You're watching Drakewing Gaming. Enjoy the video.
Hey guys and gals, Never here from Drakewing Gaming. It's something me on Twitter, The Gaming Drag. Today I'm coming back at you another Let's Play episode of A Fall from Grace. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right back into it, shall we? Alarm chain, you are up, and let's go. Alright. He's lovely, and he gave me 2 beautiful candlesticks like the ones your grandfather used to own. Madame, I'm not your nephew. I'm his friend Cedric, remember? Oh, of course, Cedric, dear. For a moment I thought Lysander was here with us. Speaking of Lysander, where is he? He told me he was visiting his parents this morning. Did he mention me at any point? I can't recall, dear. Cedric snorted sarcastically at the thought of what kind of person would leave their friend in danger, and I'm not even going to bother to find out what happened, what happened to them. Lysander was such an inconsiderate, egocentric prick, and the coyote began to wonder why on earth he was still friends with him. It was at that precise moment the door swung open and the lion himself walked in. Is lunch ready? Haven't you already eaten, dear? I had lunch a few hours ago. Lysander was taking off his overcoat and hadn't even noticed Cedric. Well, I have not, so I would appreciate some food. Oh, come the fuck on, you asshole. All right, Lizzie. Aunt Jane got up from her chair and headed towards the kitchen. I told you not to call me Cedric! What on earth happened to you? You're all dirty and bandaged up. Oh, that's a laugh. You asking me what happened after you left me at the mercy of an armed bandit. Well, what was I supposed to do? Run into your arms and get stabbed to death? Calling for help would have been nice. Cedric raised his voice as he started to get up from his chair. Look, I panicked, okay? I'm glad you came home safe. Well, you certainly didn't bother to find out if I was safe up to now. Shut up, Cedric. The whole world doesn't revolve around you. Nor you bastard. If you actually asked me how I was doing or what happened, I could tell you a really interesting story. But no, just Cedric overreacting as usual. Lysander didn't miss a beat, picking up on what Cedric had just said. What interesting story? Cedric paused as he stared furiously at the wooden floor, worried he might have said too much. Come on, Cedric. I am curious, after all. It probably would have been safer not to tell Lysander anything, but Cedric thought it was best to be honest with him. That was a bit of an excuse, though, because in reality all he wanted was to be able to tell someone else about what had happened to him the night before. I'll keep it short, as I don't feel like talking much right now. The bandit turned out to be someone I used to know very well, an old friend of mine. What? It's no big deal. He was the son of one of the servants that used to work for my parents. We were great childhood friends. You were friends with the son of a servant? My apologies, Cedric, but that is ridiculous. What could you possibly have in common with the likes of someone like that? Friendship doesn't distinguish between classes, Ly. We're all people, and you know that. That might be true, but there is a reason why the poor are poor and we are not. It is their own inclination, for if they worked hard enough, they would be just like us. And you mingling with someone like that worries me a lot. You know what? Why don't we have this talk another time? I'm not in the mood for your stupid ideas. Alright then, Mr. I spend time with the common folk, but cannot spend more than 2 seconds with my friend. Have it your way. Lysander stomped off towards the kitchen, and Cedric sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling once more. The more he thought about it, the more he realized just how much he actually disliked Lysander, and to hear the lion talk about his greatest friend so dismissively certainly didn't help. Most of the day went by as Cedric kept to himself and his thoughts, mainly how much he found Lysander annoying, how he blamed him for getting him to his current situation. I mean, yeah, dude's a piece of shit. Cedric had never been good at saving money, and after he'd met the lion, the problem had only gotten worse, to the point that his parents had ended up forcing him to leave and hadn't sent him any money since. Now Cedric concluded that for some reason he'd almost been hoping Lysander would be a good replacement for Victor, which was clearly not the case. Lysander was snobbish, petty, and selfish. Victor, on the other hand, still seemed just as kind, caring, and sweet as he used to be years ago. Eventually, Cedric spent most of the evening thinking about the fox and just how much he'd like to see him again, to the point that he wondered if this was becoming a bit of an obsession. But now he knew he had to see Victor. Cedric spent the next few days searching the town streets, hoping to come across Victor by a miracle. He had no lead, and the fact that Victor moved from town to town and had to spend most of his life in hiding certainly didn't help. He tried asking people about this masked bandit, but still nothing. Eventually, he met a wealthy lady who claimed she had been mugged by what seemed to be Victor as she was walking home one evening a few weeks before. Unfortunately, she had been so scared she couldn't really give any other details. He also spoke to some of the town guards, who told him they had been searching for this criminal's hideout for months, yet hadn't gotten anywhere yet. Cedric kicked himself as he wished he'd paid more attention to where that old building was while he was there. The light was starting to fade as Cedric walked past the tavern. He hadn't been there since the evening he'd met Victor, but seeing as he'd gotten nowhere yet, he figured he might as well have a quick drink there. Perhaps he could ask the innkeeper if he knew or had heard anything about the bandit. As soon as he was inside, he noticed a large wanted poster stuck to the door whilst he was closing it, and the image fully matched Victor's masked appearance. Wanted, dead or alive. Any person that catches this criminal shall receive great compensation from His Majesty the King. Cedric scoffed slightly, as if the king cared or even knew about some bandit in a small town. He walked up to the counter, where the innkeeper was serving some beer to a few other customers. Once he finished, he turned towards Cedric. "Evening, sir. What can I get for you?" "A large cider, please." He looked back at the poster as the innkeeper filled up his glass. "You recognize that criminal?" "Yes. I mean, it's complicated. I've been searching for him for these last few days." "Oh, want to receive the great compensation that poster mentions?" "I wouldn't bother, as they don't specify the actual price." "Do you know anything about him? Or has anyone told you anything that might help me find him?" "I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I've heard surprisingly little of him." He paused for a moment. "Although I have heard a few clients of mine were ambushed after leaving this place mere days ago." "Yeah, I was one of them." "Oh, really? I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you." "It's fine, don't worry." "You want to get even with him?" Cedric looked slightly confused for a moment. "Oh, no. Well, not exactly. Quite all right. It's not my business, after all." The coyote had soon finished his pint, paid the innkeeper, and was out on the streets once more. It was dark now, and the streets were quiet, much like the night when he had been walking home with Lysander and his friends. For a moment, it felt like he was still wandering along the alleys with them, and that none of the events that had followed had actually happened. As Cedric marched on, he turned a corner, and at the precise moment he thought he caught a glimpse of something. No, someone. He was sure he saw a figure on one of the rooftops that looked like Victor. It had to be him. Yep, there he is. But as soon as he noticed, it was gone. Everything was silent and still, just like it had been a few seconds before he saw the figure. It could have been anything, perhaps a large bird. Cedric sighed as he quickly concluded his mind was starting to play tricks on him, and that it was probably best if he got home and had himself a good night's sleep. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Hello there, pretty boy. I thought I recognized you." Cedric turned around excitedly. "Victor!" "Shh, keep it down." Victor clapped a hand over Cedric's mouth to quiet him. "Silly dog, I'm a wanted criminal, remember?" "Sorry, it's just, I've been looking for you. It was wonderful seeing you again, and I've been thinking about you a lot these last few days." Victor was excited and somewhat amused at the idea that his friend had been thinking about him so much, especially because he'd been doing the exact same thing. Suddenly he became self-conscious of how close he and Cedric were standing to each other, and how his body pressed close to the coyote's. This was probably way too close for either of them, he thought. He quickly let go of him and took a few steps back, brushing his coat and gathering his composure. "Likewise, Cedric. Look, why don't we talk somewhere more private? I'm sure we will have a lot to say to each other." "Of course." "Of course." A short time later, they were back in Victor's hideout and were sitting in the room Cedric was starting to become quite familiar with. Victor had lit a few candles, and the atmosphere was unexpectedly cozy. Cedric was on the old straw bed again, whilst the fox had pulled up the only chair in the room. "So, what's on your mind? Why were you looking for me?" "Well, the main reason is that I really wanted to see you again, but I also needed someone I could talk to. Basically, I'm stuck. I'm in a bad situation with no one I can really count on, and seeing you just made me realize how much I've lost." Victor was silent for a moment, then scoffed. How much you've lost?" "Cedric, I'm a wanted criminal having to spend my life in hiding, knowing my parents don't want to see me ever again, and that I most likely would never make it out of the mess I'm in." "Well, you are the son of a nobleman that's just having a moment of crisis during his perfect life, with a steady income, a family he can return to, and friends he can rely on." "Not to be rude, but I think you don't really understand the situation. My parents kicked me out of their house months ago. I have no money, and to avoid sleeping on the streets I've had to stay at my friend Lysander's aunt's house. Well, I thought he was my friend, at least. In the last few days I've noticed I don't really like him at all. Hell, he's one of the people responsible for my downfall, always inviting me to parties, balls, gambling houses, and so on. After all, he can spend all the money he wants. His family's the richest in the whole country. I couldn't afford this luxury, and I was a fool for thinking there would be no consequences to my actions. And now I'm stuck, just like you. The only reason it doesn't look like it is because of my appearance and fancy clothes." That didn't feel like a very satisfying note to end on, but Cedric couldn't really think of anything else to add. So he sat there in silence as he waited for Victor to say something. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that, you're right. I had no idea what you've been going through. I'll be honest with you, Cedric. I felt some resentment towards you these last few days. That was because I didn't know what had happened to you, and I just naively assumed your life was perfect. I understand. I was too embarrassed to tell you about it the other day. Victor got up from his chair and slowly walked towards the door. He opened it, and Cedric got a glimpse of a small, winding staircase beyond it. Follow me. I want to show you something. Cedric walked over to where he was standing, and the two made their way up the stairs. Can I ask you something? Anything you like. I was thinking back on the day you left. We both know the main reason why that happened, but I couldn't help wondering if there was some other reason my parents didn't tell me about. His train of thought was interrupted as soon as they reached the top of the staircase. Cedric was surprised to see a large window that led onto the roof of the building, and beyond it, a beautiful view of the whole moonlit town. He could now understand where they were, and this must have meant Victor trusted him enough to know he wasn't going to give away the location of his hideout. For a moment, Cedric felt very proud of himself. Wow, it really is something. Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. The fox stepped onto the roof and beckoned at his friend to follow him. Come on, I'll show you where I spend most of my nights most of the time. Cedric followed him almost instinctively, even though he had no idea where they were headed. I'm sorry, I forgot to answer what you were saying. The fox suddenly sounded a bit nervous. Yes, I think there might have been another reason. You know we were very close. I think they might have feared we were too close. That we were lovers. Cedric was taken completely by surprise. He never even entertained this thought. I suppose that makes sense. We were always together. Victor began walking again. Pretty much. The conversation grinded to a halt for what seemed like way more than a few seconds. The two walked on the tiles and reached the rooftop of a nearby building. Victor sat down against one of the chimneys and Cedric did the same. So, what are you going to do now? I mean, in the next few days? I have no idea. I was thinking about leaving this town for good. I'm tired of wandering about the same places all the time. I want to try heading east towards the bigger towns. Who knows, I might get lucky and be able to find some work there. Granted, I'd have to buy myself some new clothes and change my appearance as well as my name, but it'd be more than worth it for a fresh start. For a moment, Cedric became worried that he wasn't going to see Victor ever again. Trying to suppress the bubbling panic, he gathered his thoughts and answered the fox somewhat jokingly. Maybe I could run away with you. It's not like I have many other options anyway. Victor looked at him and suddenly his eyes seemed to light up. Actually, that idea isn't half bad. You could come with me. I'd be happy to have a traveling companion. You mean it? Of course. Life's way more fun when you've got some company. I'd have someone to talk to besides myself, and between the two of us, I've talked to him way too much. He noticed Cedric was looking a bit uneasy and was likely conflicted about the whole matter. He leaned towards him and held his hand reassuringly. Look, think about it, and if you decide you're serious and you want to come with me, meet me on the outskirts of town tomorrow night. Tomorrow? Cedric asked, even though he'd heard that the first time. I will. I did think it through, but you have no idea how much I want to. The two spent another hour sitting there, quietly chatting and just enjoying each other's company, and the beautiful view from the rooftops. It was moments like these, Cedric thought, that made life really worth living. Before the morning hours could begin, Victor found himself skulking through the darkened streets once more. He adjusted the mask on his face, careful to make sure it was tightly secured in place. He didn't need any additional risk for this job. This would be the last one he needed in order to prepare for the journey ahead. Victor drifted a hand down to his belts, triple-checking to make sure the empty sack tucked into them was secured. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there, y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and check out our Patreon if you can, if it always helps. Alright, I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!